check this out. Maybe I'll just put this right here, so that way you guys can still see me, right?
Yeah.
There's still protection there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you guys started. Today is January 19th, and we are having our in-service on promoting a therapeutic dining experience. So it's a very exciting topic. Okay, so this is your test right here. And this is the first live in-service we had in a while. So Zooey is here. Zooey. So I knew Zooey was gonna. Promoting a therapeutic dining experience for our residents. Okay, Zooey, that's a test right there. Then you just sign in over here, okay?
We have two.
No, just one test.
Just one test.
Yeah, just one test. One test, and then there should be more chairs over here. Okay. All right. So the main purpose of this in-service is that we try to provide a environment for the resident that's like a home-like environment, not so much like a clinical setting. You know, like we're at the hospital, or we're at the skilled nursing, but more or less like they're at home. Okay. So. And it's always a challenge, trying to get these residents to eat and drink. And so that's why they say, if you try to promote like a home-like environment, it might help the resident who has dementia, because how many of your residents, percentage-wise, you think that has dementia? Either long-term, like significant type of dementia, or just a short, something, yeah, like a significant amount of it, right? Like over 80% of your residents. I can only think of one or two residents that are pretty oriented, and they sit together in that dining room over there. Otherwise, everybody has some form of dementia, right?
Yeah.
And so, an institutional atmosphere is depressing to the appetite. A loving home-like atmosphere will stimulate the appetite. Okay, that's what's stated on here, and it makes sense because they feel comfortable. They're like, okay, we're out here eating, believe it or not, a lot of your residents who are looking at you when you say something, for example, if you make a comment, I was like, man, this food doesn't look good. That stick to their head. You don't want to treat your resident like they're kids, but at the same time, you know that they have a disease that affects their ability to think. So if you make significant comments like, oh, this food is kind of mushy, it doesn't look good. It's the same food all the time, it's gonna make a big impact on that resident. It's gonna kill his appetite or her appetite, right? So make sure that if you are making a comment, you just make a comment like, "Wow, this food looks good. It's time to eat. We're gonna eat breakfast, or we're gonna eat lunch, or we're gonna eat dinner." Because they might not even know that it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, so it's important we just have a test. So it's important to just really communicate with these residents and make good, productive comments towards them as they're eating. Okay. Describe some things that you'd like about a recent meal you had. Eating is not just about food. The environment and social surroundings play an enormous role in stimulation or appetite. A lot can be done to improve the nursing home dining room environment. So even when you go out to eat, right? Like, for example, Ricky wants to take out his girl or whatever, he's going to be like, that atmosphere is so important. A lot of times when I'm looking at, like, where am I going to take my wife to eat today? I'm looking at, it has to feel good. That environment has to feel good. Like,
the ambiance.
Yeah, like I don't even care like what they're serving. You know what I mean? Like I wanna be able to like eat somewhere that feels comfortable. And then if I walk in there and they look kind of ghetto, I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to take my wife in there. You know what I mean? Same thing here. You want to make the resident feel pretty comfortable. Okay, so, I'm sorry? Yeah. I got it at 99-cent store. Yeah. So yeah, it's really important, like how that they feel at home when they're eating their meal. Provide appropriate hygiene prior to meal. The better the resident feel about themselves, the more positive they will feel about eating. For example, if you bring the resident in and it's like lunchtime, right? Like they still have like a piece of like egg in their mouth or something like that from breakfast. man, that's gonna taste pretty bad. You know what I mean? So make sure that you're brushing their teeth, obviously, and
That should have not even happened in the first
right?
place.
Yeah. So, but like the same thing, like you know,
Dignity issue.
before you serve your meal or whatever, provide them coffee or whatever, give them some kind of drink to kind of stimulate their appetite. You know, because there's coffee, there's drinks, there's soda, whatever. There's liquids that really help assist their appetite, right? Make sure another thing that they mentioned is that make sure eyeglasses, dentures, and hearing aids are in place. Dress the residents appropriately and offer clothing protectors as needed. Good. And in this environment, we just kind of apply it just because we know things get kind of messy more often than not. So also make sure residents are properly seated and tables are adjusted to accommodate wheelchairs. And dining room seating should encourage socialization. I know we try to do that. A lot of our residents, like I said, are pretty confused. But, you know, we try to separate, like we have two dining rooms, we have residents here that are pretty confused, and the ones that are more oriented are over in the main dining. Just because, you know, it's comforting to eat with somebody who, you know, at your level compared to somebody who's always yelling.
Standing
right?
over you.
Yeah. And then here's the thing that is important to follow the dining room seating plan. This is very important to residents. They are used to their individual routines. Okay, notify the charge nurse of changes you would think it would improve seating plan. Because a lot of times, we've had this many times, residents who are like, hey, why are you guys moving me? You know what I mean? Like, I used to sit over here. So as much as you can, try to keep their seating arrangements the same, so that way they're comfortable, you know, they're sitting with the same individual. All right, atmosphere of the dining room. Of course, that temperature has got to feel pretty good for them. They're always cold, so obviously if it's cold in the dining room, we can't change the temperature. We want to dress them kind of warm. Also, the noise should be at a minimal. And if there is some music in the background, it should be the music of choice. As you know, a lot of the music that are played here should be accustomed to their, you know, like the Jewish tradition type of thing. So, you know, we've walked in a couple times and there's music in there that's inappropriate. So, try to pay attention to that.
Yeah, that darn country music.
Yeah, right?
Just kidding.
So, tables with nice tablecloths and pretty centerpieces will make the meal more pleasant. Lighting should be adequate for everyone to see, but not bright and glaring. A lot of your residents, they don't really like anything that's too bright. You know, everything's too bright, everything's too loud, everything's too cold. So it's got to be just kind of like right in the middle, right? So, and who better to know these residents than the CNAs, right? And you know these residents a lot more than we do, especially the nurses who are per diem. Turn off television. If they're in the room, turn off television. It is too distracting to residents and staff during meals. So yeah, you got a resident who's got mild cognitive impairment and you got the TV on and you got a meal in front of them, it's probably not gonna get eaten, okay? Behavior and attitude of the staff. The meals should never seem rushed. And I know as far as staffing goes, that we try to do as best as we can to try to assist these residents, but you know, as much as we can, try not to rush these residents and give them enough time to eat on that 1 hour period. So it's all about time management. The attitude of the staff at mealtimes has a big impact on the residents' appetites. Bad feelings and negativity are contagious. Remember I said before, if you have a room full of people, you have 8 positive people and you have 1 negative individual, that 1 negative individual is gonna drag everybody down. Negative comments, we talk about that. The conversation of staff during mealtime should be with the resident rather than over them. So if you act as if a resident isn't there, he won't feel as present in the meal. Okay, so try to encourage your resident, try to keep them involved as you're talking to them and assisting them in the meal. And then serving meal. Offer residents fluids before meal. We'll talk about that, right? Coffee or whatever. Try to get the swallow and gag reflex going. A lot of them have been kind of just laying in their bed or sitting there for quite a bit, and their mouth is dry. And so, offer them meal before offer them fluid before they even eat their meal, right? Also, they talk about here that serve the meal at an appropriate time. You know, as you know, if you start your meal at 12 and then you serve it at 12:30, and it's like, oh man, we only got 30 minutes to eat. But just make sure there's no time frame in there. If a resident takes longer, and I think I saw Viviana there today. She sat with the resident and gave that resident more time than the allotted time that we have for meal. So thank you, Viviana. Diets must be served in accordance with menu cards. Of course, this is a safety issue. If you have and monitor these residents as they're eating. You know, if they're pocketing their foods, if they're having a difficulty swallowing, if they're coughing. You know, is it repositioning that needs to change? Is it the actual meal texture that needs to change? So as you're feeding these residents, you're monitoring how they're, they're swallowing. Serve and assist residents at the same table concurrently. This way, no one feels neglected, and they are sharing their meal together. This promotes unity and harmony. Hot food should be hot, and cold food should be cold. I know that's kind of like simple, right? But we serve the residents, especially in their room, right? They're complaining their coffee's too cold or whatnot. So try to place yourself in these residents. They're trying to eat this and trying to drink their coffee and it's cold. Nobody wants that. So if not, report this to the charge nurse, if the dining room, because it should be hot. If coming out of that dining room, there might be an issue with the heater. So if it's coming out cold, report it to the supervisor.
We were talking before where we had those jugs, when we serve them, if they need coffee, we just pour it, it's fresh right there. Now it's like by the time it gets there, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So we have an extra coffee that you can fill up?
We used to have that where we can just, we bring empty cups and then if they ask for coffee or not, we just fill it and bring it in their room. It was much easier.
And now what is that one?
Now it's like they already pre-pour them, even the water is like lukewarm and they're supposed to be drinking tea. So we are constantly going
back and forth on warming things?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk to Erica to see if, I know it's probably because of the COVID. We're trying to minimize the, infection, but that shouldn't matter, like food-wise, it's very difficult to spread these COVID-19 through contact as far as food and drinks and stuff like that. So we might have to revisit that. Thank you, Jackie. If a resident refuses food, offers substitute. The kitchen should always provide several alternatives. And we know our kitchen has a lot of alternatives, right? If your resident doesn't eat, there's always going to be alternatives. Okay? Any questions so far, guys? Any comments? No? Let's keep going. All right. Providing adequate assistance, having enough staff, which is a big question mark right there, right? To assist with meals is vital. Plan your workday to leave adequate time to get all of your residents in the dining room in time. If there is a problem doing this, discuss your work schedule with a charge nurse. Ooh, okay. Residents should receive appropriate assistance with eating. Know each resident's plan of care as this can quickly change. If you think a resident needs more help than is reflected on the plan of care, let the charge nurse know. We know that somebody takes a lot more time. We're going to try to feed the resident first, serve the resident first. There are different levels of assistance residents may require. There's supervision, there's MAC assist, there's min assist, there's queuing, there's setup. Know which residents require help with their trays. For instance, opening condiments, milk container cutting meat. And then causes of reduced ability to feed self. And there's a couple issue with residents who may not be able to help themselves with meal, and one of them would be impaired movement. They have impaired dexterity, they have dementia, they have depression, they have agitation, sensory deficit, they have weakness. So these are just an example of what the resident might be going through that this would be the reason why they need more help than some residents. Signs that a resident needs assistance with meals: if they're unable to hold their utensils, unable to comprehend utensil use, leaves food uneaten if not assisted, and then wanders or paces. So these are reasons resident also why some resident might need some help. Okay. Can you name some assisted devices for meals? What are some of the assisted devices that we can use for meals? Huh? CP cups. Yeah, the one with a little hole, like a little cut corners. What else?
Mechanical,
Plastic food, plate guard,
plate guards,
some roller knife, and then those heavy utensils. They're called weighted utensils.
weighted,
Right.
spoons.
2-handled cups,
Nosy cup.
some nosy cups, and then I guess what's this? Altered handles on utensils. Okay, so those are just a few assistive devices that we can use for a resident. Okay, assisting resident to eat. Make sure all items are in plain view and in reach. Encourage resident to, because a lot of your residents too, like they just need assistance, right? With setup, and then they can eat on their own. But make sure we're doing all this before we leave them. Encourage resident to assist. Give resident as much time as possible to eat. Provide finger foods when appropriate. And we had resident before here where she could eat on her own, but we had to make sure that her food was, they're able to hold it. So they're like finger foods, right? Assisting the visually impaired resident. Describe location of food on plate using, what would you use when the resident has an impaired visual and they're able to eat on their own? What are we telling them? Explaining to them. Like where the food is at, location-wise,
I
right?
would do the clock.
There you go, the clock, right? Hey, you know what, there's mashed potatoes at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then not only you're promoting independence, but you're kind of telling these residents where the proper food is at. And then if you have puree food, to make it easy, you mix them all together, right?
No,
No, we're not supposed
you're not allowed to.
Okay, you're not supposed to, that's right. Make sure you guys are not doing that. If a surveyor comes in and you're over here mixing, mashed potato with rice and meat or whatever, okay, that's a deficiency. We can't do that. So what we're supposed to do is tell them, hey, here's if it's mashed, you're gonna say, hey, this is corn, this is meat, and then when you're feeding a resident or assisting with feed, what are you supposed to be doing as far as your position? You're supposed to be sitting down eye level, right?
Eye level.
Eye level. Make sure you guys are eye level, not mixing food, obviously. And then if surveyor is there, obviously, when you go from one resident to another, make sure you're doing your
Separate hands.
if you're touching the resident. If you're touching the resident, you're actually doing hand washing. Okay. These alcohol. Feeding a resident, allow resident to choose the order of foods when possible. Test food temperature, do not mix food as we talked about. Alternate bites of food with fluids. And we've seen a lot of residents before where they do really well if you mix it with fluids, right? Instead of just keep shoving, food after food. The fluid helps with softening of the food. Allow resident ample time to chew and swallow. Monitor for difficulty swallowing. We talked about that. Can you name some different diet consistencies prescribed for residents?
Mechanical chop, soft, puree.
Regular, thin liquids. You got thickened liquids. All right. What are some things you should observe for when feeding a resident who has a risk of choking? We talked about that already, right? So, make sure who is a high risk. So residents who are high risk, right? They're maybe confused. They have difficulty swallowing.
Give them time.
They're not sitting appropriately. If you try to sit them up, they're like kind of leaning back.
Dry mouth.
So yeah, somebody who's always have dry mouth or whatever. So these are residents that might be at high risk for choking, and we kind of want to monitor them.
And those people, the residents who leave their mouth open all the time, sometimes their throat is so dry, so you want to give them a little bit of liquid to make sure the throat is not dry. This way when you put food, it's not just stuck in one place.
Absolutely, yes. The liquid that we talked about is important for swallowing and assisting these residents with their meal. All right, for the resident eating in bed, keep head of bed elevated. How many degrees? Talked about this last time. 60 degrees, right? At least 60 degrees. If they're able to tolerate 90 degrees, that's good. Okay, but obviously if somebody who's had a hip replacement and they can't tolerate 60 degrees, you want to do 45 or whatever is tolerable for these residents. But try to keep their head elevated. What about a resident who you feel is not doing well with their meal? Who can assist these residents? Remember, in skilled nursing, there's always somebody that specializes in something, right? Who can we summon or call, right, to assess these residents?
Linda. Speech therapist.
All right. You can always tell your nurse, you know, I feel like this resident is having difficulty swallowing. Can we call Jolinda to do her magic? Maybe, you know, change his diet, right?
Yeah.
All right. There must always be a staff member in the dining room to monitor resident safety during meals. In a choking incident, resident can die very quickly. All right. Any questions, guys? After all that, is there any comments? Is there something you want to add that you feel like that you're doing that is right that we haven't mentioned here? Okay, you guys gotta fill out this test here and sign in right here to get your CEUs, and then for people on the YouTube, is gonna do the same thing. All right. So remember that if you see your coworkers, they can do that. You guys can do your makeup every Thursday. So tomorrow, if you want to make up something, come to me, and we'll make up in service. Oh, so for the ones over here, list 2 ways to help a resident get ready for mealtime. What can we do for residents to get ready for mealtime? Brush their teeth. Huh?
Are you sure the dentures and glasses are on?
Glasses are on, yeah.
Proper positioning.
There you go.
Drape them with
Help them with the
clothing protector.
Clothing protector, okay.
If needed.
Good. So this is the answers that we're giving now is for you guys that's on YouTube that maybe is making this up. Here's the second question. What are the 2 ways to assist residents in the dining room? Okay, offer alternative meal menus if they don't like the current meal menus. Okay, what else? What are 2 ways to assist residents in the dining room?
drinks to stimulate
There you go.
the palate.
Yep, offer them drinks to stimulate their appetite, right? Coffee, juices, but also like positioning them, putting them in the right table, right? So they're comfortable with people around them, you know, at their level, obviously, right? Don't put them with somebody who screams all the time and they're 8 all times 4. So.
Remember that your lunch is being provided today.
Yeah, so you get some chips and soda there, or whatever, sandwiches. Okay, two more. What are the 2 types of altered diet consistencies?
Mechanical soft chops, puree.
Okay, good. You guys all hear that on YouTube? Put that down. What should you do if a resident is choking?
If they're coughing or some cough, if they're sucking blue,
Ask them if they answer.
Okay, good. All right, so that was Sarah. Man, she's good. She just gave you guys the rundown.
Or the honey look maneuver.
All right, there you go. All right, guys. Thank you so much. That's it.